The war in Ukraine edges closer to a critical flashpoint, as Donetsk remains the unresolved territorial hurdle. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio told the Senate Foreign Relations Committee that the next round of negotiations will be directly between Ukraine and Russia, signaling Moscow's indispensable role in any credible security guarantees. Rubio bluntly identified Donetsk as the bridge we haven't crossed, the gap that remains, highlighting the deep divisions that have stalled peace for years. Despite trilateral diplomacy in the UAE last week, he warned that reconciling Kyiv and Moscow's positions will be extremely challenging.
I think the one remaining item remains the one you're all familiar with, and that is a territorial claim on Donetsk in particular. And I know there's active work going to try to see if both sides' views on that can't be reconciled. It's still a bridge we haven't crossed. It's still a gap, but at least we've been able to narrow down the issue set to one central one. And it will probably be a very difficult one, but nonetheless, it's one that work is going on. There was a meeting late last week in the UAE, which I think for the first time in many years.
A recent UAE trilateral included U.S. Representatives Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff, alongside Russian and Ukrainian officials. Rubio said follow-up talks this week will be mostly bilateral, with the U.S. present but not leading negotiations, reflecting the highly sensitive and secretive nature of the process. On security guarantees, Rubio issued a stark warning. European forces alone are irrelevant without a strong U.S. backstop, exposing NATO's capability gaps and reaffirming Washington's central role in any post-war framework. He noted that while the U.S. and Ukraine broadly agree, Russia remains the unpredictable variable.
There's obviously a Russian dynamic at play here. And of course, any security guarantees would come into play after the conflict were to end. Of course. And so there's that component to it. But the broader point I was making is that in all these discussions about security guarantees that people are putting out there, it's pretty clear that the only security guarantee that people keep pushing forward is one that involves a deployment of some European troops on the ground, but with a very strong U.S. backstop. My point being, it was in the broader context of the NATO alliance, and that is, we have to understand that even something like that, in Europe, they don't have the capabilities of doing a real security guarantee without a U.S. backstop, which tells you the capability gap that needs to be closed.
Domestic politics complicate matters further. Zelensky continues to reject territorial concessions, while Donald Trump has repeatedly urged Ukraine to strike a deal to prevent further losses. Rubio emphasized that public scrutiny makes negotiations politically risky for both Kyiv and Moscow. As the next round of talks looms, Donetsk stands as the ultimate test of diplomacy. Rubio's testimony makes clear a lasting peace will require Russia's direct involvement, the US's military guarantee, and a high-stakes balancing act between strategy and domestic pressure.